Trail 9 was not closed because of bear activity. That was the explanation we gave the public because it was simple, believable, and short enough to fit on a warning sign. People understand bears. They understand bad weather, broken bridges, unstable slopes, aggressive wildlife. They do not understand a trail that learns your voice. They do not understand footsteps that follow you from behind, matching your pace exactly, stopping when you stop, starting again when you try to convince yourself it is only an echo. And they definitely do not understand why a grown man with 14 years in the Park Service would stand at a locked gate every evening before sunset and beg strangers not to walk into a perfectly normal stretch of forest. My name is Aaron Keller. For 11 years, I worked as a park ranger in a remote section of national forests that most tourists only pass through on their way to somewhere prettier. We had lakes, old fire roads, black spruce stands, abandoned logging cuts, and enough hiking trails to make visitors feel like they had discovered something wild without actually being too far from a road. Trail 9 was one of those trails. Nothing special during the day. That was the worst part. In daylight, Trail 9 looked harmless. A 6-mile loop through mixed pine, cedar, and old-growth hemlock, with a narrow switchback section that dropped toward a creek bed before climbing back up through a ridge. Families hiked it, retired couples walked it with trekking poles. College kids used it for sunrise photos. Birdwatchers liked the lower section because warblers nested along the wet ground in May. It had a little wooden trailhead sign, a gravel pullout, a registration box that people almost never used, and a small map under fogged plastic showing the loop, the creek, and the third switchback. That third switchback is where everything started. Or maybe it had always been where things started, and we only noticed too late. The first time I heard about the footsteps, I almost laughed. Not because I thought the hiker was lying. He was shaken enough that laughing would have been cruel. But because footsteps behind you on a trail are usually one of three things: another hiker, an animal, or your own sound bouncing off the trees in a way your tired brain does not like. That was the explanation I gave him. He was a young guy named Marcus Leary, 27, maybe 28. He came into the ranger station on a Tuesday afternoon in late September, wearing a rain jacket he had clearly bought that morning and boots that still had store creases in them. Tourists always look different after their first night alone in the woods. Less confident, less loud. Like the trees had taught them something they did not know how to repeat. He stood at the counter and asked if Trail 9 had two paths. I told him it had one loop and a spur that led to the old creek overlook. He said, "No. I mean, is there another path that runs beside it?" I said there were some deer trails, maybe old maintenance cuts, but nothing official. He looked behind him when I said that, not toward the door, toward the wall, as if something might be standing right behind the drywall, listening. Then he said, "Someone followed me for 2 miles yesterday." I asked if he saw them. He shook his head. "Did you call out?" He nodded. "Did they answer?" He shook his head again. I asked what time it happened. He said, "Just before sunset." That was the first detail I wrote down. At the time, it meant almost nothing. Hikers get nervous near dark. The forest changes tone. Shadows stretch across the trail. Animals start moving. Visibility drops, and every little sound feels closer than it is. I had given that speech 100 times, but Marcus kept talking. He said the footsteps started behind him near the third switchback. He thought another hiker had caught up. He stepped aside to let them pass. No one came. When he started walking again, the footsteps started too. One step behind him, then two, then exactly matching him. Left, right, left, right. He stopped. They stopped. He took 3 quick steps. They took 3 quick steps. He turned around once and saw nothing but the empty trail sloping down through the trees. I asked if he had been wearing earbuds. He said no. I asked if he had recorded it. He looked embarrassed and took out his phone. That was when the mood in the station changed. People always say they wish they had recorded something strange, but most of the time they do not. Panic makes you forget the obvious. Marcus had not forgotten. He had pulled out his phone and recorded almost 4 minutes of audio while walking back toward the trailhead. The first 30 seconds sounded like what you would expect. Wind through cedar, his breathing, boots hitting damp dirt, a zipper tapping against his jacket. Then faintly, behind all of that, another set of steps. Not loud, not dramatic, just there. A soft, steady, delayed crunch. The delay was what bothered me. It was not echo. I knew the trail. There was no rock wall there, no canyon, no broad open slope to throw sound back cleanly. Trail 9 was dense, moss, trunks, brush, wet ground. Sound got swallowed there. It did not return to you like a hallway. Marcus stopped walking on the recording. For 1 second there was only wind. Then the other steps stopped too. I remember feeling a small, cold pressure behind my ribs. Not fear yet. Recognition. The kind you get when a machine makes a sound it should not make, and some part of you knows the repair is going to be worse than the noise. On the recording, Marcus whispered, "Hello?" Nothing answered. Then he whispered, "I can hear you." For a few seconds, the recording was quiet. Then from somewhere behind the phone came one single step, close, wet dirt pressing under weight. Marcus swore and started walking fast. The second set of steps followed him, fast too, not running, not chasing, just matching. I asked him what happened after the recording ended. He said his phone died at 12% battery. That happens in cold weather. I told myself that immediately. He said he ran the last half mile. When he reached the trailhead, the sun was down. His car was there. No one else was in the pullout. No other vehicles, no headlights, no people. He asked me if the park had trail cameras. I told him we did in some areas. He asked if I could check them. I said I would. He stared at me for a long moment, then said, "It sounded like me." I did not understand. He said, "The steps, it sounded like my walking, like if someone had recorded my footsteps and played them back right behind me." That was the second detail I wrote down. After Marcus left, I pulled the Trail 9 camera log. We had 2 cameras near that corridor then. One pointed at the trailhead registration box, mostly to monitor vandalism and after-hours entry. Another sat near the creek overlook because people had a habit of climbing over the rail and pretending gravity respected confidence. The trailhead camera caught Marcus entering at 3:18 p.m. It caught him leaving at 6:47 p.m. alone both times. No one else entered after him. No one else left before him. I checked the overlook camera. Nothing. Not because it did not catch him. It caught him at 4:11, walking past with a bottle in one hand and his jacket tied around his waist. Then the file skipped. The camera jumped from 4:11 p.m. to 6:02 p.m. with no motion triggers between. That could happen. Batteries sag, SD cards glitch, a branch moves enough to fill storage with useless clips, and the camera overwrites. Moisture gets inside the housing. I had seen every version of technology failing at the worst possible time. So I wrote possible camera malfunction in the log. That phrase would show up again. A lot. The second report came 5 days later. A woman named Elaine Porter came in with her husband. They were in their 60s, experienced hikers, the kind of people who carried paper maps and extra socks. They had taken Trail 9 in the late afternoon because the lower loop was supposed to be easy. Elaine said they heard a child laughing. Her husband immediately said, "We don't know that it was a child." She looked at him and he stopped talking. I asked where. She said near the third switchback. Again. I asked what time. She said maybe 40 minutes before sunset. Again. They had been coming down toward the creek when they heard laughter behind them. A little girl, Elaine said, maybe 6 or 7 years old, not crying, not calling for help, laughing like she was playing hide and seek. The Porters turned around. No one was there. They called out. No answer. They waited. Then from farther up the trail behind them, they heard the same laugh again. Mr. Porter wanted to keep moving. Elaine wanted to look. She said if there was a child lost in the woods, they could not just leave. That is how the forest gets you. Not with claws. Not at first. It uses the decent part of you. They walked back up nearly a quarter mile. No child. No tracks except their own. No bright jacket between the trees. No movement. Then Elaine heard the laughter again. But this time it came from below them, closer to the creek. They had just come from that direction. Mr. Porter said they were done. They turned around and headed for the trailhead. That was when he heard his wife speak from the woods behind him. Not Elaine beside him. Elaine behind him. Her voice, clear as if she were standing 20 feet back in the trees, saying, "Wait, I dropped my glove." He looked at Elaine. She was beside him. She had not spoken. They left fast. By the time they reached the trailhead, Elaine was crying. Mr. Porter had one hand clamped around her wrist so hard it left marks. I asked if they saw anyone else. They said no. I checked the trailhead camera. They entered at 3:46 p.m. They left at 6:31 p.m. alone. No child entered. No child left. The overlook camera did not record between 4:22 and 5:58. Possible camera malfunction. That was the first time I walked Trail 9 after a report. I took Ranger Ellis with me. His first name was Paul, but nobody called him that. He was Ellis to everyone. Late 40s, former search and rescue before he joined the Park Service. Calm in the annoying way that makes you trust him even when you do not want to. He had taught half the younger staff how not to get lost while pretending they already knew. I told him about Marcus and the Porters. He listened without interrupting, then asked, "You want the professional answer or the honest one?" I said both. He said, "Professional answer is people get jumpy near dark. And honest?" He looked toward the Trail 9 sign. Old trails get reputations for a reason. I did not like that answer. The afternoon was damp and gray, with low clouds snagged in the tops of the trees. Trail 9 looked like it always did. Brown needles, roots slick with mud, ferns dying back for autumn. We checked for signs of camps, illegal hunting blinds, reflective tape, speakers, anything someone could use to scare hikers. Nothing. We checked for tracks along the shoulder. Deer, raccoon. One black bear print old enough to be useless. Boot prints from the Porters probably. A few smaller prints that might have been Marcus. Might have been another hiker from earlier in the week. Near the third switchback, Ellis stopped. He did not say anything at first. He just stood there with his head tilted slightly, listening. I asked what. He held up one hand. The forest had gone quiet. Not normal quiet. Normal quiet is still alive. Branches move, birds shift. Insects tick under leaves. Far-off water speaks to itself. This was blank. The sound seemed to have been removed. I checked my watch. 5:12 p.m. Sunset was at 5:58. 46 minutes. Ellis looked at me. Neither of us said what we were both thinking. Then from somewhere behind us on the trail came one footstep. Just one. A soft press into wet dirt. Ellis turned his head slightly, not all the way around. I whispered, "Did you hear that?" He said, "Keep walking." The way he said it made my skin tighten. Not scared. Instructive. Like he had said those words before. I started to turn. His hand closed around my sleeve. "Don't." I looked at him. He was still facing forward. I whispered, "What do you mean, don't?" He said very quietly, "There's an old rule about this trail." I almost laughed because it sounded ridiculous, and because part of me wanted it to be ridiculous. "What old rule?" He started walking. After 3 steps, I heard it again behind us. 1 step, then another, then 2 more, falling into rhythm behind our own. Ellis did not speed up. That was important. He walked the same pace, shoulders loose, eyes forward. I matched him. My radio crackled once, not with a voice, just static. Then something behind us took 3 quick steps. I stopped. It stopped. Ellis stopped too, but he did not look back. He said, "Aaron, listen to me. If someone calls your name from behind you on Trail 9, you keep walking." I stared at the back of his head. "What?" "If it sounds like me, you keep walking. If it sounds like your mother, your wife, your kid, anybody, you keep walking. If it asks for help, you keep walking. If it says it is hurt, you keep walking." "I don't have a kid." "I know." The footsteps behind us shifted. Closer now. Maybe 30 feet, maybe less. Ellis said, "And if the footsteps stop when you stop, don't test it twice." That was when I began to feel real fear. Not the sharp fear of seeing something jump from the brush. This was slower, heavier. The fear that comes when another person clearly knows the danger better than you do and still does not have control over it. We walked, the steps followed. At the bottom of the switchback, the trail bent left toward the creek. I could see the old wooden marker nailed to a cedar. 9C. That was wrong. The 9C marker belonged farther up the ridge, half a mile ahead. I knew because I had replaced it myself after a storm 2 months earlier. I stopped before I meant to. Ellis cursed under his breath. The footsteps stopped behind us. The 9C marker hung there in front of us, wet and dark, the black paint fresh-looking in the fading light. Ellis said, "Do not write that down yet." That bothered me almost as much as the footsteps. "What do you mean yet?" He did not answer. Then my radio clicked. 3 bursts. Our call sign tone. I lifted it slowly. "Unit 3 to base," I said. "Radio check." Static. Then my own voice came through the speaker. Not live, not clear. A slightly flattened copy of what I had just said. "Unit 3 to base. Radio check." Ellis closed his eyes. Behind us, from the empty trail, something whispered my name. Aaron. It was not a monster voice. That would have been easier. It sounded like my older sister. Her name was Claire. She had died 8 years before that day. Cancer, not an accident. Not dramatic. Slow, unfair, and ordinary in the way death usually is. The last time I heard her voice in person, she was in a hospital bed asking me if I would drive her son to school the next morning because she did not want him seeing her that week. No one in that forest knew her voice. No one at the station knew how she used to say my name when she wanted me to stop pretending I was fine. But from behind me on Trail 9, 40 minutes before sunset, my dead sister said, "Aaron, please." I almost turned around. I want to be honest about that. I did not freeze like a brave man. I did not instantly know it was a trick and keep moving with heroic discipline. I almost turned. My right foot shifted. My shoulders began to follow. Ellis grabbed the back of my collar and shoved me forward so hard I stumbled. "Walk," he said. The voice behind us changed. It was still Claire, but younger now. The way she sounded before the illness took the strength out of her. "Aaron, wait." Ellis raised his own radio and pressed the side button without transmitting. The way you do when you want your hand busy, but you know the radio will not help. We walked out without speaking. The footsteps followed us until the last quarter mile. Then the forest sounds came back all at once. A crow called. Wind moved through the tops of the pines. Somewhere far off, a branch cracked under its own weight. And the footsteps stopped. At the trailhead, Ellis leaned both hands on the hood of the truck and stared down at the gravel. I asked him how long he had known. He said, "Known? Nobody knows anything about that trail. You said there was a rule." He nodded. "Who told you?" He looked at the Trail 9 sign. "Ranger named Holloway, retired before you started. He told me when I was still seasonal. I thought he was just trying to scare the new guy." "What exactly did he say?" Ellis swallowed. "He said Trail 9 is fine as long as the sun is up. He said once the birds stop, you don't look back, not for any reason." I asked if he had ever heard the footsteps before. He said yes. I asked if he had ever heard a voice. He looked at me then. His face was pale. "Once." "Whose?" He did not answer. The next morning I filed a maintenance concern about displaced trail markers and possible unauthorized activity. That was the first lie I told for Trail 9. Not the last. For the next 2 weeks, nothing happened. That almost made it worse. People think constant fear is the hard part. It is not. The hard part is when everything goes normal again. You begin negotiating with yourself. Maybe Marcus had panicked. Maybe the Porters had heard another family somewhere off trail. Maybe Ellis had old stories in his head and I had let the mood get to me. Maybe the voice had not sounded like Claire. Maybe grief had filled in the shape of it after the fact. Memory is not a camera. Fear edits. I told myself that every day. Then a hiker disappeared. His name was Daniel Voss, 34. Local enough to know the trails, not local enough to respect them. He signed into the Trail 9 box at 2:04 p.m. on a Saturday. Wrote full loop under destination. No hiking partner listed. At 7:20 p.m., his girlfriend called dispatch because he had not returned to their cabin rental and was not answering his phone. By 8:10, Ellis and I were at the trailhead. By 8:30, search and rescue was mobilizing. By 9:15, we had lights moving through the lower trail and dogs at the registration box. The dogs did not want the trail. That is not me being dramatic. Search dogs get distracted. They get tired. They follow scent wrong sometimes. They are animals, not machines. But these two were experienced. One was a bloodhound named June. The other was a shepherd mix named Carter. Both had worked missing persons in rough terrain before. Both took scent from Daniel's jacket. Both followed it to the start of Trail 9. Then both stopped. June backed up first. Her handler thought she had lost the scent and circled her. June whined, low and strange, and refused to step past the first marker. Carter made it further, maybe 20 feet. Then his hackles went up, and he began to shake. His handler kept saying, "Easy, easy, find him." Carter sat down in the middle of the trail and would not move. That was when Ellis looked at me. I knew what he was thinking. Sunset had been at 6:04. We were already long past the safe part of the story, if safe had ever been the right word. The official search could not stop because of a feeling. A man was missing. Protocol mattered. Every minute mattered. Hypothermia did not care about local legends. So we searched. At first, everything looked normal. Headlamps swung between trunks. Radios popped with position checks. Boots tore through leaf litter. People called Daniel's name in the standard rhythm, loud enough to carry but spaced enough to listen. Daniel, pause. Daniel Voss, pause. Park Service, call out if you can hear us. I hated hearing his name thrown into the trees. Every time someone called, I waited for something else to answer. We found his water bottle near the third switchback, then his hat, then his phone. The phone was lying face down in the mud beside the trail, screen cracked but still working. That felt impossible until I saw the battery case. He had one of those extended packs clipped to the back. It had 1% left. Ellis bagged it, but before he powered it down, the screen lit up. Recording app open. One audio file. Duration 21 minutes, 14 seconds. Ellis and I listened to the first minute right there under the trees. I wish we had not. The recording began with Daniel laughing nervously. "Okay," he said. "This is either going to make me feel stupid or prove I'm not crazy." Then walking. His boots. Wind. Then the second set of steps. Same as Marcus. Delayed. Patient. Daniel said, "Whoever's there, you're not funny." No answer. He walked faster. The steps walked faster. He stopped. They stopped. He said, "I can hear you breathing." There was no breathing on the recording. Not at first, then faintly behind him, something inhaled. Long and slow. Not animal, not human either. More like someone pulling air through wet cloth. Daniel whispered, "Nope." He started moving again. For several minutes, he tried to convince himself it was an echo. He even clapped twice. No echo came back. Then at 13 minutes into the recording, a voice called from behind him. A woman's voice, soft, worried. "Danny?" Ellis stopped the playback. The forest around us was full of searchers, but in that moment it felt like we were alone. I asked Daniel's girlfriend later if anyone called him Danny. She said his mother did. His mother had been dead for 9 years. We did not find Daniel that night. We found his boots. They were placed neatly side by side on the trail just past the third switchback, toes pointing toward the creek. No blood, no drag marks, no sign of a struggle. Just boots. His socks were folded inside them. That detail did something bad to the search team. People can explain missing gear. A boot sucked off in mud, a pack dropped during panic, a hat snagged by branches. Folded socks are different. Folded socks mean intention. Either Daniel had taken them off himself, or something wanted us to think he had. At 1:18 a.m., the search coordinator pulled the teams back from the lower loop for safety. Officially, the terrain was too dangerous in darkness. Unofficially, 3 different people reported hearing someone walking behind them when nobody was there. One volunteer quit before sunrise. He did not make a scene. He just handed in his radio and said, "I can't listen to it say my son's name again." Nobody asked what he meant. By noon the next day, Daniel Voss was listed as a missing hiker, presumed lost off trail. Trail 9 remained open. That still makes me angry. I understand why it happened. I understood then too. Closing a trail requires justification, documentation, risk category, wildlife confirmation, geological hazard, active fire, law enforcement threat. You cannot lock public land because rangers heard things. Not officially. So the park issued a caution notice about changing weather, limited visibility, and staying on marked trails. 3 days later, a family found a new marker. Not one of ours. It was nailed to a cedar at the start of the lower loop, just below the 3rd switchback. A small square of pale wood, black paint. 9D. There was no 9D marker on Trail 9. There never had been. I took it down myself. The nail was old iron, the kind we did not use anymore because it stained wood and snapped in cold weather. The board smelled fresh cut. On the back, carved shallow with a knife or maybe a sharp rock, were 4 words. Do not count them. I put the marker in a paper evidence bag and drove it to Superintendent Marlowe. Marlowe had been with the service longer than any of us. She was not warm, but she was fair. Early 50s, silver hair always pinned tight, voice calm enough to make angry people lower theirs without realizing it. She had the kind of authority that did not need volume. I set the marker on her desk. She read the front, then the back. Her expression did not change, but she stopped moving. I told her about Marcus, the porters, the shifted 9C marker, Daniel's recording, the dogs, the boots. She let me talk until I ran out of words. Then she asked, "Who else knows all of this together?" I said, "Ellis." She looked toward the closed office door. "Anyone outside staff?" "Not the full pattern." She nodded once. Then she said, "Keep it that way for now." That was not the response I expected. I expected skepticism, anger, a lecture about evidence and panic. Instead, she opened the bottom drawer of her desk and took out an old green binder with a cracked spine. Not a current incident binder. Old. The label had faded so badly I could only read one word. 9. She did not hand it to me. She opened it herself. Inside were photocopies of logs, some typed, some handwritten. Dates going back decades, missing person notes, trail maintenance reports, wildlife complaints, radio interference forms, most of them ordinary on their own. Together they were not ordinary at all. 1978, hiker reported hearing his own voice calling from ravine, no injury. 1979, trail marker 9B found relocated near creek, cause unknown. 1980, child separated from family for 40 minutes. Claimed grandpa told me to come down the hill. Grandfather deceased. 1981, search dog refused lower switchback during missing hunter operation. 1982, 2 campers reported footsteps circling tent, though no tracks found. 1983, seasonal ranger requested transfer after voice incident. No details. 1984, audio recorder recovered during search contained repeated phrase in missing subject's voice after estimated time of disappearance. At the bottom of one photocopied page, written by hand in block letters, was the same rule Ellis had told me. If called from behind on Trail 9, do not turn around. I looked up at Marlowe. She said, "Every district has something old staff passed down that does not fit the forms." I asked if she believed it. She said, "Belief is not useful, patterns are." That line stayed with me. Belief is not useful, patterns are. She told me the binder had been unofficially maintained by 3 superintendents before her. Not because anyone wanted ghost stories in federal records, but because staff kept getting hurt when the pattern was ignored. I asked why Trail 9 had not been permanently closed years earlier. She said it had been closed twice. once after a hunter disappeared in 1989, once after the seasonal ranger transfer in 2007. Both closures were challenged. Both times, after months with no new incidents, public pressure reopened the trail. Hiking groups complained, local businesses complained. One county commissioner called it superstition management. The trail reopened. The reports slowed. Then eventually, they started again. I said, "Daniel Voss is missing." Marlowe closed the binder. "I know. We need to close it. We need a reason they can accept. We have a missing hiker. We have thousands of missing hikers in parks over the years. We do not close every trail indefinitely." I hated how calm she was. Then she looked at me and said, "Bring me something I can put in a public notice." So we tried. For the next week, Ellis and I treated Trail 9 like an investigation. We installed new cameras, not just at the trailhead and overlook, along the switchbacks near the creek, at the 9B marker facing both directions. We added audio units in weatherproof boxes. We replaced the old trail markers with numbered metal-back signs and photographed each one with GPS coordinates. We walked the trail every morning, never after 3 p.m. That was Marlowe's rule. Not official, not written, but absolute. At first, the equipment worked. Then on the fourth day, every camera on the lower loop stopped recording at 5:19 p.m. Sunset was 6:05, 46 minutes. They resumed at 6:42, all of them. Battery levels normal, memory normal, no weather event, no animals captured in the last frames before the gap. The audio units were worse. Most recorded nothing during the silent window. One did not. The unit near marker 9B recorded 42 minutes of footsteps, not one set, dozens, slow walking, fast walking, limping, running. Some close to the microphone, some far away, some moving in circles. No voices, no wind, no birds, just footsteps. Ellis listened for less than a minute and shut it off. I asked what was wrong. He said, "Those are ours." I told him that was impossible. He pointed to the waveform on the laptop. "Listen to this section." He played 10 seconds. 2 sets of boots, one heavier, one lighter. A slight scrape on every 4th step. "That's me," he said. He had a knee injury from an old rescue fall. When he got tired, his right boot dragged slightly. The recording timestamp said 5:41 p.m. We had walked that section at 10:08 that morning. 7 hours earlier. The unit had recorded our footsteps in the evening, when we were not there. The next day, the 9B marker appeared upside down. Not fallen, not twisted loose by wind. Removed and reattached upside down with the same screws. The screw heads were not stripped. No tool marks, no fingerprints we could lift. On the back, scratched into the metal with enough force to cut through the coating, were 2 words. He turned. We all knew who it meant. Daniel. Marlowe closed Trail 9 temporarily that afternoon. The public notice said maintenance assessment and trail safety review. It lasted 4 days. On the 5th day, 2 teenagers climbed around the lock gate after school. They posted a picture online. 2 boys grinning beside the closure sign. Caption, Trail 9 challenge before dark. We did not know about the post until later. At 6:56 p.m., one of their mothers called dispatch. The boys had not come home. That night became the reason Trail 9 closed for good. There are parts of it I still dream about in pieces, not in order. The beam of my flashlight on wet cedar bark. Ellis whispering, no one says their names. The smell of crushed fern under too many boots. Marlowe's face lit blue by her radio. A search dog crying like a person. And behind all of it, the footsteps. Always behind. Always just close enough to make you want to look. We entered Trail 9 at 7:22 p.m. There were 6 of us in the first team. Me, Ellis, Ranger Holt, 2 SAR volunteers named Reyes and Miller, and a dog handler named Gene with Carter, the same shepherd mix who had refused the trail during Daniel's search. Marlowe stayed at command by the trailhead with deputies and a second team ready to sweep the upper ridge. The plan was simple. Move to the 3rd switchback, locate tracks, search downhill toward the creek, maintain radio contact, pull out if conditions degraded, Conditions degraded before we reached the first bend. The radios began repeating. Not echo, repeating. Marlowe called, Team 1, status. Ellis answered, Team 1 moving eastbound, marker 9A. 3 seconds later, Ellis's voice came through again. Same words, same tone. Team 1 moving eastbound, marker 9A. Then again, quieter, farther away. Team 1 moving eastbound, marker 9A. Holt looked at his radio like it had become an insect in his hand. Ellis said, Ignore repeats. Only respond to live call signs. We moved. Carter did not want to. Gene had him on a short lead, and he kept angling back toward the gate, claws digging into mud. His ears were flat, his tail tucked tight. He made no sound, which was worse than whining. At marker 9B, we found the boys' prints. 2 sets of sneakers, one larger, one smaller. Both moving fast side by side. They had not tried to hide. They had followed the trail like kids who thought fear was something made for other people. Near the third switchback, the prints changed. The smaller set stopped, turned in a half circle, then left the trail. Straight into the trees. The larger set continued 5 steps, then doubled back, then followed. That was not good. People lost at night often leave trails for bad reasons. They see lights, they hear water, they think a shortcut will save them. But these prints were different. The smaller boy had turned cleanly, as if someone had called him from the brush and he had simply obeyed. We found his phone 10 yards in, still recording video. The screen was cracked, the image was mostly black, but the audio was clear. A boy whispering, Dude, stop. Another boy farther away laughing nervously. Then a voice from the dark, a woman's voice, warm, familiar. Caleb, come here. The boy holding the phone breathed hard. He whispered, That sounds like your mom. The other boy said, Mom? Then the video shook as the first boy moved forward. The recording ended with him saying, Why is she standing like that? We did not play the rest there. We should have left then, I know that now. We should have marked the location, pulled back, brought floodlights, drones, helicopters, whatever official tools make people feel less helpless. But 2 children were in the woods, and somewhere below the trail, a boy screamed. It was short, one sharp high sound. Then silence. Carter broke. He lunged backward so hard Gene almost fell. His lead snapped tight. He twisted, choking himself, desperate to get away from the lower slope. Gene said, He's done. He's done. I can't move him. Ellis made the call. Holt, take Gene and Carter back to the trail. Radio command, tell them we have audio contact downhill and dog refusal. Aaron, Reyes, Miller, with me. Holt did not argue. I admired him for that later. In the moment, all I felt was the forest closing behind us. We moved downhill. Not on a trail anymore. Through ferns, over slick roots, between cedar trunks packed close enough to scrape our shoulders. Our headlamps caught rain droplets hanging from branches like tiny eyes. Ellis kept us in a line. No one said the boys' names. That was harder than it sounds. Every search instinct tells you to call out, but every pattern told us not to feed the trees a name. At the bottom of the slope, we found the first impossible marker. 9A. It was nailed to a hemlock at chest height. 9A belonged near the trailhead. I looked at Ellis. He said, Keep moving. 20 yards later, 9B, then 9C, then 9A again. Miller whispered, We're going in circles. We were not. The compass said we were moving southeast. The slope said we were moving down. The creek sounded closer ahead. But the markers kept restarting. 9A, 9B, 9C, 9A, 9B, 9C, then 9D, the unofficial one, the marker that did not exist. It hung from a cedar just beyond a shallow wash, swinging slightly though there was no wind. Under it, in the mud, were the boys' footprints, both sets. Barefoot now, 2 pairs of sneakers sat neatly side by side at the base of the tree. Socks folded inside, same as Daniel. Reyes crossed himself. Miller said, No, absolutely not. Then the footsteps began behind us. One set at first, slow, heavy, Not the boys, not ours. Ellis raised one hand. We froze. The steps stopped. Miller started breathing too fast. I could hear it through his teeth. Ellis whispered, "Do not turn around." Behind us, a boy's voice said, "Help!" Miller made a sound like he had been punched. The voice came again. "Please, my leg hurts." It sounded maybe 15 feet behind us. Young, crying, real. Reyes whispered, "Is that him?" Ellis said, "No." The voice said, "Mr. Miller?" Miller's head snapped slightly. Ellis saw it. "Do not!" The boy behind us sobbed. "Mr. Miller, please!" Miller whispered, "How does it know my name?" No one answered. Then a second voice came from the dark ahead of us. Older boy, angry and terrified. "Caleb, don't go with her!" That one felt real. Not behind, ahead, down toward the creek. Ellis made a decision. We move forward, slow. No one turns around. No one answers anything behind us. We moved. The footsteps followed. Then more joined. Light steps, heavy steps, running steps that never got closer. A limp, a drag, bare feet slapping mud, boots crunching leaves that were not there. It sounded like a crowd walking behind us, a crowd that knew exactly how far away to stay. Miller began counting under his breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. I grabbed his sleeve. "Stop!" He looked at me wild-eyed. "I need to know how many." "No, you don't." But once someone tells you not to count, your brain starts counting for you. The steps multiplied. I lost track at 13, or I think I did. I tried humming to block it out. Then I realized I was humming a song Claire used to sing to her son when he was little, and I stopped because I was afraid the woods would learn that too. At the creek bed, we found the older boy. His name was Jason, though I will not use his last name. He was standing in ankle-deep water under the footbridge remains of an old service crossing that had washed out years before. His jacket was gone. One hand covered his eyes. He was shaking so violently the beam of Ellis's light trembled across him. Ellis called, "Jason, Park Service. Keep your eyes on the ground and walk toward my voice." The boy did not move. He said, "It looks like my mom." Ellis said, "Do not look at it." Jason sobbed once. "It's wearing her wrong." Those words have never left me. Wearing her wrong. From the trees behind Jason, something moved. I did not see a body. I saw absence. A vertical piece of darkness where the trees did not line up correctly. Something tall standing just beyond our lights, behind the branches, not hiding exactly, waiting to be recognized. Jason lowered his hand. Ellis shouted, "Eyes down!" Too late. Jason looked over his shoulder. His face changed. Not into fear. That would have been better. His expression went soft, relieved, like a child seeing someone safe after being lost. He said, "Mom?" Then he stepped backward into the trees. Reyes ran, not away, toward him. Ellis shouted, but Reyes was already moving. Good man, brave man, wrong move. He grabbed Jason's sleeve just before the boy crossed the tree line. For 1 second, both of them were in our light. Then every radio in our bodies screamed. Not static, voices, dozens of them. Our voices. Marlowe's voice. Daniel's voice from the phone recording. Marcus whispering, "I can hear you." Elaine Porter saying, "Wait, I dropped my glove." Claire saying my name. The missing boy crying. A woman laughing softly. And under all of it, footsteps. So many footsteps, the ground seemed to vibrate. Our lights flickered. When they steadied, Jason was on the ground, unconscious but visible. Reyes was gone. His flashlight lay in the mud, beam pointing at the 9D marker. His footprints were there. Then they were not. I do not mean they faded. I mean they stopped in the middle of wet mud with no next step. As if something had lifted him cleanly out of the world. Miller turned around. I saw him do it. Maybe he heard Reyes. Maybe he heard his own child. Maybe he forgot the rule because panic makes simple things impossible. He turned his head over his right shoulder. The expression on his face went blank. Then he smiled. Ellis tackled him. That saved his life. I believe that. Ellis hit him low and drove him face first into the mud. Miller screamed, fought, clawed at the ground, trying to turn his head back toward whatever had him. Ellis pinned him and shouted, "Aaron, get the boy!" I grabbed Jason under the arms. He was cold. Too cold. His skin felt like he had been lying in snow, though the night was above freezing. He whispered something as I dragged him. At first I thought he was saying his brother's name. Then I realized he was repeating a sentence. She had too many teeth behind her voice. I pulled him uphill. Miller was still fighting Ellis. The footsteps behind us surged forward. Not running, arriving. That is the only way I can describe it. The sound of many things arriving all at once. Ellis looked up at me. There was mud on his face, blood at his hairline. He said, "Go." I said, "Not without you." He looked past me then, not behind him, past me, toward the slope, toward the impossible markers, toward the place where the trail should have been. His face changed just a little. I heard a voice behind me. Not Claire, not a stranger. Ellis, standing behind me, though the real Ellis was in front of me, saying, "Aaron, help me with Miller." The real Ellis closed his eyes. He understood before I did. The thing had his voice now. He said, "Do not answer me if I call again." Then he shoved Miller toward me and turned around. I shouted his name. I should not have. I gave the forest his name one more time. Ellis looked back over his shoulder. Not at me, behind him. The dark between the trees seemed to open. For the first and only time I saw something like a face. Not clear, never clear. A suggestion of features made from other people's expressions. A mouth almost human. Eyes placed where eyes should be, but too still. Skin or bark or shadow pulled tight over something that had studied us without understanding why our faces worked. And around it, hanging in the dark like masks in deep water, were pieces of voices. Not heard, felt. My sister's voice, Daniel's mother, a child laughing, Marlo over the radio, Ellis saying, "Keep walking." Then Ellis walked toward it. No struggle, no scream. He stepped past the 9D marker and into the trees. His radio fell at the base of the cedar. The footsteps stopped. All of them. For one horrible second, the forest was silent. Then from everywhere behind us, Ellis's voice said, "Trail's clear." I do not remember the climb back well. I remember dragging Jason until my shoulders burned. I remember Miller stumbling beside me, sobbing and apologizing to someone who was not there. I remember Reyes's flashlight fading behind us. I remember seeing the same 9A marker 4 times. At some point, Holt found us. He had disobeyed the pullback order after hearing our radios go bad. He and Jean came in with Carter, who fought them every step until he reached us, then turned and barked downhill like he was holding back the dark by sound alone. We got Jason out. We got Miller out. We did not get Reyes. We did not get Caleb, the younger boy. We did not get Ellis. By sunrise, Trail 9 had more uniforms on it than I had ever seen. Deputies, state wildlife, search and rescue, park officials, 2 people from the regional office who arrived in clean jackets and spoke quietly into phones. They found Jason's jacket hanging from a branch 20 feet above the creek. They found Caleb's backpack at the 3rd switchback. They found Reyes's radio in the mud beside the 9D marker. They found Ellis's hat at the trailhead registration box. Not inside the trail, at the entrance, placed brim down on top of the sign-in sheet. The sheet had one new entry, no time, no destination. Just a name written in Ellis's handwriting. Aaron Keller. Marlo saw it before I did. She ripped the sheet out, folded it twice, and put it in her coat. I asked her what she was doing. She said, "Keeping you alive." The official report took 3 days to write and 30 minutes to ruin. My first version was too honest. I wrote about the voices, the markers, the radio repeats, the dog refusal, the barefoot prints, the folded socks, the way Reyes vanished without tracks, the way Ellis walked towards something wearing a shape made of voices. Marlo read it once, then she closed her office door. She looked older than she had the week before. She said, "This report cannot exist. I told her 3 people were gone. She said, I know. I said their families deserve the truth. She said, their families deserve not to have every drunk, thrill-seeker, and paranormal channel in the country climbing that gate to hear their dead loved ones call from the trees. I hated her for saying it. Then I knew she was right. Not morally. Maybe nothing about what we did was morally clean. But practically, she was right. If we wrote the truth in language people could find, people would come. They would come with cameras. They would come with microphones. They would come because they thought fear made them special. And Trail 9 would learn all their voices too. So the report changed. Severe terrain hazard, hazardous wildlife activity, probable predator involvement, unstable night conditions, search complicated by weather, darkness, and unauthorized entry. Trail closed indefinitely pending safety review. Reyes was listed as missing during search operation. Ellis was listed as missing in line of duty. Caleb was listed as missing, presumed deceased. Jason survived physically. I visited him once in the hospital. His mother was there. His real mother. Alive. Exhausted. Holding his hand like someone afraid the room might steal him. Jason would not look at the window. He asked me if his brother was still on the trail. I said we were still searching. He shook his head. Not in disagreement. In pity. Then he whispered, "It doesn't keep you there all at once." I asked what he meant. His mother told me he needed rest. As I stood to leave, Jason grabbed my sleeve with surprising strength. He said, "Ranger Ellis is loudest now." I did not go back to the hospital. I could not. The permanent closure went up 2 weeks later. Not temporary, not seasonal. Permanent. The public notice said Trail 9 was closed due to hazardous wildlife activity and ongoing safety concerns near the lower ravine. Violators could be fined. Gates were installed at both entrances. The registration box was removed. The old trailhead sign came down. People complained. Of course they did. They said the park was overreacting. They said the government loved closing things. They said locals had hiked that trail for decades. They said they had a right to public land. Some made jokes. Some left comments about werewolves and monsters and ranger cover-ups. A few tried to sneak in. We caught most of them, not all. The first month after the closure, I worked the gate every evening. I told myself it was duty. That was only part of it. The truth is, I was waiting to hear Ellis. I heard him on the 9th evening. The sun had just dropped behind the ridge. The sky was still orange in the west, but the trees beyond the gate were already dark. I was checking the lower chain when the bird stopped. I stood still. No wind. No insects. No distant highway. From beyond the gate, just past the first bend of the closed trail, a radio clicked. I looked at the unit on my shoulder. Silent. The click came again from the woods. Then Ellis's voice said, "Aaron, I found Caleb." I closed my eyes. My hand tightened on the chain until the metal hurt. He sounded tired. Not monstrous, not fake. Tired in exactly the way Ellis sounded at the end of a long search when he had not eaten and would not admit he needed to sit down. "Aaron," he said, "bring a light." I did not answer. The voice changed. Not into a growl, into Claire. "Aaron, please, I'm cold." I locked the gate. Then I locked the secondary chain. Then I got in my truck and drove back to the station with the radio off. That became my life. Not every night. Not even most nights. But often enough. Trail 9 tested voices the way an animal tests fences. Ellis asking for help. Claire crying. Marlowe calling my unit number from beyond the trees while the real Marlowe stood beside me saying nothing. A little boy laughing. A man whispering, "I can hear you." Sometimes there were footsteps. Sometimes just one set. Sometimes dozens. Once in fresh snow, I found prints on the wrong side of the closed gate. Bare feet, adult-sized, walking from the trail to the gate. Stopping there. No return prints, no approach prints. Just a person who had apparently begun existing 15 feet inside the closure and walked to the lock. Above the prints, tied to the chain with orange flagging tape, was a folded sock. We did not log that officially. By then, I understood the difference between records and warnings. Records are for people who arrive after the damage. Warnings are for people who can still turn around. Marlowe retired the following spring. At her farewell gathering, she gave a short speech, thanked the staff, avoided sentiment, and left before anyone could make her cry. Before she drove away, she handed me the old green binder, the one labeled 9. I told her I did not want it. She said, "That's why you should have it." I asked if there was any way to stop it. She looked toward the tree line beyond the parking lot. "Stop a trail?" I said, "Whatever is on it." She thought about that. Then she said, "Maybe it isn't on the trail. Maybe the trail is where it reaches us." I still do not know what that means. I have theories. Every ranger has theories, even if we pretend we only deal in evidence. Some think something lives below the ravine. Some think the old logging road cut through a place people were never supposed to walk. Some think sound behaves strangely there and fear fills in the rest. I do not believe that last one. Fear does many things. It does not fold socks. It does not move trail markers. It does not write your name in a missing man's handwriting. My own theory is simpler. I think something learned that people turn around when they hear what they love. A child, a parent, a friend, a dead sister, a trusted voice behind them saying, "Wait." Maybe it started with animals. Mimicry exists in nature. Birds copy calls. Predators learn patterns. People underestimate how much of survival's listening. But Trail 9 learned us too well. It learned names. It learned grief. It learned guilt. And once something learns the sound that can make you turn around, it does not need to chase you. It only needs to wait behind you and speak. Years have passed since the closure. The map no longer shows Trail 9 as a loop. New visitors do not know it existed unless they find old guidebooks or outdated hiking blogs. The forest has begun taking back the lower entrance. Ferns grow through the gravel. Moss covers the old signposts. The gate is newer now, steel with a tamper alarm and 2 locks, because people are still people. I train new staff every season. I tell them the official version. Hazardous wildlife activity, unstable lower ravine. No entry after closure. Report any trespass. Do not engage alone. Then if I trust them, I tell them the practical version. If you are near the old Trail 9 corridor and the woods go silent before sunset, leave. If you hear footsteps behind you, do not test them. If someone calls your name from the trees, keep walking. If the voice sounds like someone you love, walk faster. And if it sounds like me, ignore it. Most laugh. Not because they think I am joking exactly, but because people laugh when they want permission not to be afraid. I do not correct them. The trail corrects people enough. Last October, we had our first serious trespass in almost a year. A man in his 30s cut the side fence with bolt cutters and entered just before dusk. He had a camera rig, a headlamp, and a live stream audience. We found the live stream later. He told viewers he was going to debunk the haunted ranger trail. That phrase made me so tired I had to pause the video. For the first 10 minutes, he joked. He showed the closed gate from the inside. He whispered like he was making a movie. He said the woods were creepy but beautiful. He said park rangers invented stories to keep people away from dangerous areas because lawsuits were expensive. Then the bird stopped. You could see him notice. Not all at once. His smile faded first, then he stopped talking. He looked around listening. The live chat kept moving on the screen, people typing jokes. Bear, run bro, fake. Then came the footsteps. Behind him, one set, soft, delayed. He laughed once, too loud. Okay, he said, that's actually weird. He turned the camera behind him, empty trail. That turn may be why he survived, or maybe it was too early. Maybe Trail 9 does not take everyone who looks back. Maybe it chooses. I do not know, and I do not like not knowing. He kept walking. The footsteps followed. Then a voice called from behind him. We could not hear it clearly on the live stream at first. Just a muffled sound, like someone speaking through leaves. He froze. The chat exploded. He whispered, "That's not funny." The voice came again, this time clear enough. A woman saying, "Evan?" The man's face changed. He whispered, "Mom?" His mother, we learned later, was alive and living 2 states away. He turned the camera toward the sound. For 1 frame, maybe 2, the stream showed something standing between the trees. Not a body, a pale oval where no pale thing should be. The impression of a face tilted slightly, as if listening through borrowed skin. Then the feed glitched. When it came back, the man was running. Branches hit the camera. His breathing tore through the microphone. The footsteps behind him were running too, but not gaining, matching, letting him know it could. He reached the gate from the inside and climbed like an animal. Deputy Harmon found him half an hour later walking down the service road with no shoes, 1 sock, and both hands over his ears. He kept saying, "It used her voice wrong." The video was taken down within a day. Not by us, by him. He called the station once to apologize. I told him to stay away from Trail 9. He said, "I moved out of the state." Smart man. People ask if I feel guilty for hiding the truth. Yes, every day. But guilt is not always a compass. Sometimes it is only proof that every direction is bad. If we tell the truth, people come. If we lie, some people still come. So we do the thing that saves the most lives and lets us sleep the least. We close the gate, we maintain the locks, we keep the old binder in a drawer that does not officially exist. We use words like wildlife and ravine and safety concern because those words do not invite curiosity the way footsteps and dead voices do. And when family members ask if their missing loved one suffered, we say we do not know. That is the only honest answer we have left. Tonight I am standing at the Trail 9 gate again. It is late November. Cold enough that the mud has a crust, but not cold enough for real snow. The sky is clear in the west, red behind the black teeth of the pines. My breath shows in my flashlight beam. The new closure sign is bolted to steel. Trail closed beyond this point. Hazardous wildlife activity. No entry sunset to sunrise. That sign has been stolen 4 times. People will steal anything if they think fear gives it value. I check the lower hinge. Greased, upper hinge, good. Tamper alarm, green. Primary lock, seated, secondary chain. Tight, camera, active. I write the closure time in my log, 4:41 p.m. Sunset is 4:58, 17 minutes. A truck slows on the road behind me. 2 hikers lean out the passenger window. Young, early 20s, smiling in the way people smile when they have already decided the rule is silly and are giving you a chance to join the joke. "Trail really closed?" the driver asks. "Yes. We just wanted to get a quick picture at the old sign. No entry. We'll be 5 minutes." "No." The passenger laughs. "What's actually back there?" I look past them at the darkening trees. I could tell them. I could tell them about Daniel's boots, about Jason in the creek saying his mother was wearing herself wrong, about Reyes's flashlight lying in mud, about Ellis's voice calling from behind a locked gate. Instead, I say, "Unstable conditions near the ravine." The driver rolls his eyes. "Right, bears? Among other things." That makes them laugh again, but not for long, because at 4:52, the woods behind the gate go silent, completely. No birds, no wind, no little branch ticks. The passenger notices first. His smile fades. The driver looks toward the gate. From somewhere beyond the first bend of Trail 9, a footstep presses into the dirt. One, then another. Slow, unhurried. The hikers stop laughing. I keep my eyes on them. Not the trail. Never the trail. The passenger whispers, "Is someone back there?" "No," I say. Another step. Closer. The driver says, "Dude, let's go." Good. Smart. Then a voice calls from behind the gate. My voice. Not close, not far. Exactly where the first bend hides the trail from view. "Hey," it says, "can you help me with the lock?" The hikers both look at me. I do not move. The voice behind the gate speaks again. Still mine, calm, practical, familiar. Battery's dead on the camera. Bring the toolkit. The passenger's face has gone pale. He says, "How are you doing that?" "I'm not." The driver starts the truck. Then the voice changes. It becomes Ellis. "Aaron," it calls. "I found him." For a moment, my hand tightens around the logbook. Even after all these years, some part of me still wants to answer. That is the cruelest thing about Trail 9. It does not just use fear, it uses hope. Hope that the dead are not dead. Hope that the missing can still be found. Hope that if you just turn around fast enough, just this once, you will see the person you failed to save standing there, alive and waiting. The hikers drive away. I watch their taillights until they disappear down the road. Behind the gate, Ellis says, "Please." I close the logbook. I check the lock one more time. Then I say the only thing I allow myself to say at Trail 9 after sunset. Not to the voice. Not to Ellis. Not to Claire. To myself. "Keep walking." I get in my truck. I do not turn on the radio. I do not look in the rearview mirror until the gate is far behind me. And as I drive back toward the station, the dark trees slide past on both sides of the road, quiet and patient, like they have all the time in the world. People still ask why Trail 9 is closed after sunset. I give them the official answer. Hazardous wildlife activity, unstable conditions, public safety. Then I stand at the gate until they leave. And if they ask why I look so serious, why I keep one hand on the lock and never turn my back to the trail, I tell them the only truth they might actually believe. Some places are safe only because someone keeps saying no. Trail 9 is one of them. And if you ever find yourself near an old closed gate in the forest just before dark and you hear someone you love calling from behind the trees, do not answer. Do not look back. Do not take one step toward the voice. Because whatever is waiting there does not need to chase you. It only needs you to turn around.